Hi, everyone in our Sydney community. I see people coming and joining our event. So usually 10 minutes we provide people to join our event. And our and today I would like to unfortunately passed away before his time. Um, he was dedicated to promote SAP as in Sydney, and unfortunately this event. But once we had in-person events before the COVID in December 2019, Raj helped us to organize the event in the university itself. That's why I think it will be great to mention him in this event. And after this introduction, I would provide the agenda of our event. In today's event, we have 3 speakers from SAP. First speaker will speak about SAP Business Application Studio, some of the new things that coming after the decade. Business Application Studio was used for the first time in Victoria University for about 400 students for the last 7 weeks. I run basic course of basic use of the Business Application Studio for about 40 students. They all invited to this event. And let's also understand that we have 2 different audiences in our event. One audience is professional programmers, SAP UI5 with between 5 to 15 years experience. Another audience that will see this presentation will be students that use the Business Application Studio and BTP for the first time for last 7 weeks. First speakers will be Oliver Graeff and Raj Korn. He will speak about the SAP Business Application Studio tools that SAP provide for low-code development, no-code development, about Free-Tier that used for Business Application Studio in new BTP, and additional SAP UI5 updates. We'll have a roundtable when students will be able to ask questions, or not only students, but also professional developers. But let's provide some opportunity to students to speak and share their experience, how to use Free-Tier of BTP and BAS for the first time. And afterwards, we will have Stefanie, who will provide some updates about SAP UI5 and tools, example Fiori elements and others to develop SAP UI5 applications. I would ask each of the presenters, first of all, to present yourself, introduce to our audience. I really appreciate your time that you make to this presentation. I received an apology from Jürgen Müller and Craig Mill. They will not be able to participate in this event, but they would like to see the recording of this event. They evaluate our Sydney community very much. We have about 200 developers in our community coming to such meetings. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we have to run those meetings remotely. But fortunately, once we're running those meetings remotely, we could have you participating and presenting. So from my side, this is all it. I will put myself on mute and I will only work on admitting people from the lobby. So please introduce yourself, Oliver, Raj, and Stefanie, and we could start in few minutes.
So start in a few minutes, not right now.
Oh, you're introducing yourself and you could start the presentation in few minutes. But first of all, introduce yourself and I will allow you to share your content.
Okay, yeah. My name is Oliver Graeff. I'm at SAP. I'm product manager at SAP, mainly responsible for UI technologies and specifically for SAP UI5. So handing it over to Raj to stick to the sequence of our agenda.
Hi, my name is Raj Korn, and I'm product manager for SAP Business Application Studio and SAP Web IDE, both the professional version as well as the low-code capabilities of the Business Application Studio. Over to you, Stefanie.
And I need to unmute. Hi, everyone. And my name is Stefanie Hager, and I'm also product manager. I'm responsible for SAP Fiori Elements, which is actually part of SAP UI5. It is a template and metadata-driven approach to building SAP UI5 applications. And I'm also responsible for a tooling set that's called SAP Fiori Tools. And we deliver SAP Fiori Tools as part of Business Application Studio that Raj is responsible for. And SAP Fiori Tools supports the creation of both SAP Fiori Elements apps and also apps that are built with SAP UI5, not using SAP Fiori Elements. So I will refer to this as SAP UI5 Freestyle.
Thanks, everyone. And we could follow our schedule and you could start your presentation. Is there, will you, Oliver, or Raj start first?
Yes, it's me starting and handing over to Raj. Can you see my my slides? Is that working fine?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. Great. So off we go. So to start with the topics, with the UI technologies, with the tools, specifically with the Business Application Studio, I would like to start off with Fiori, the user experience topic at SAP, and how SAP UI5 as the reference UI technology support that, and then handing over to my colleagues. So my agenda is briefly mention the user SAP's design system, SAP Fiori, explaining the value of SAP UI5, and then mention a couple of highlights of UI5 and roadmap aspects. So let's start. What is SAP UI5? So if there's just one thing you take home of this this session here, it should be what I have described here in this blog. So it basically says, what is SAP UI5? It's the UI technology for Fiori or even beyond Fiori. We have a little video here and we have a list of values of SAP UI5. So if you have asked yourself a question on why is SAP using SAP UI5 and not just any other UI technology like Angular or React, you can see here what the reasons are. The reasons are that SAP UI5 supports enterprise applications, enterprise qualities. So those qualities which customers, partners, people working in the SAP ecosystem typically look for. And that is usually very different to any generic UI technology which exists in the market. If we start with the Fiori user experience, if you use the term Fiori, it could mean different things, and sometimes there's a bit of a mix-up. So Fiori is the design system. It's the target design system of SAP. So the guidelines, the specification of how applications should look like, how they should behave, and so on. So that's the design system Fiori. But we use the term Fiori also for the products which actually deliver a Fiori user experience. For example, Fiori applications in SAP S/4HANA. Then there's development tools, and that's the focus of this session, obviously, with Application Studio and Fiori tools and so on. So tools to develop Fiori applications, tools to extend standard Fiori applications from SAP. And there's the technologies. So the technologies used to efficiently build a Fiori user experience. There's the Fiori Launchpad to access applications. There's the Fiori Elements approach, which Stefanie will explain. And last but not least, there's SAP UI5 as the web technology to deliver a Fiori user experience. And if you look at the Fiori user experience, or in general user experience we have at SAP, or you might even have beyond SAP, outside SAP, they look different. Even SAP has different user experience, maybe from acquired solutions, maybe from legacy solutions. So you have a number of solutions here, Ariba, S4, and a couple of other systems, and they look different and they have a different experience. And if an end user has a business scenario covering many solutions, they will experience a break in the user experience, in the design, and so on. And that's what SAP Fiori strives for, a target design system, a consistent design for all the applications. And that means not only colors and fonts and icons, but also the interaction behavior, the features, how you navigate through your applications, and so on. You can see on the right, that's one preview screen of Fiori Launchpad, which is used as an entry point to start the applications, with various tiles to launch applications, with cards, with some analytical content, and so on. So there's various aspects on this consistency, but an important aspect of Fiori is to deliver a consistent user experience for many applications in SAP and beyond SAP. And how can we realize this? We can realize this with SAP UI5 as the web technology. And as you can see here at the top of the screen, SAP UI5 is the web framework, obviously. It's for building cross-platform applications. So we have SAP UI5 in on-prem solutions like S4HANA or Business Suite. We have SAP UI5 in cloud solutions like Business Technology Platform and others. So we really can, or we have the right technology in all those different platforms available. And it's for building enterprise-grade applications. And that's what I mentioned earlier. We're not looking at some little Hello World applications, which could be built with any UI technologies, but we are looking at security, we are looking at accessibility, and all those features which our customers would typically expect they get from SAP. So that is what comes basically out of the box with SAP UI5. So what are the main areas or investment areas in SAP UI5? One is obviously the technology innovation. SAP UI5 must not be a proprietary technology at SAP, but it needs to adopt what's happening in the space of web development outside, that we leverage the latest features in browsers, for example, that we use the latest web standards which are in the market, and so on. That's an obvious thing. Then user experience is a topic. So we provide the latest evolution of Fiori design, for example, and maybe I can quickly show you what this means. So we have a latest evolution of the Fiori design system. You can see here a blog from our Chief Design Officer, Ben Lehnert, introducing the latest theme. It's called Horizon. You see the latest theme with an improved design, visual design, and like a better design on how to structure information on the screen. So that's the design aspect. And then there's a technology aspect to it. How can we implement this? How can SAP applications implement this? And we have the Horizon theme implemented, as you can see here in this blog, with various SAP UI technologies, including SAP GUI, including WebDyn Profar, ABAP, and of course SAP UI5 and others. So here you can see how important it is to have a consistent UI technology, bringing the latest evolution in Fiori design to all the applications in SAP. We have the development experience. How can we efficiently develop Fiori applications? And we'll hear a lot about the Business Application Studio, of course. And what is also important, gaining more relevance lately, is what we call adoption experience. How can we adopt this Fiori user experience also on let's say, other technologies. If you're in SAP S/4HANA, you have the full Fiori technologies and you have SAP UI5 and Fiori elements and everything is good. But if you are on other products, SAP acquired products, non-SAP products, which use a different UI technology, for example, Angular, React, how can you put a Fiori user experience on top? And all of this makes up a modern and consistent Fiori experience. One aspect is flexibility. So we have standard applications at SAP we deliver to customers, but usually customers or partners need to adapt an application. They take the standard, but usually there's some parts which need to be customized, need to be changed to fit the expectations and the requirements. And we have functionality in SAP UI5 to do this. And we have functionality for different types of users. We have functionality for developers. That's the classical thing. If you're having an ABAP background, you know bodies and, for example, partners implementing bodies. But we also have functionality for key users and end users. They would not work in coding, not work in Business Application Studio, for example, but a key user or an end user would work in from the runtime UI via drag and drop. For example, a key user could change a screen, maybe remove some fields because they are complex, too complex, rename fields and so on, do some changes for a group of end users. So all of this would leave a standard application untouched and adding some changes on top, which are required by the customer. And that is a technology also part of SAP UI5 to handle these extensions versus standard application, that they are nicely separated but still work properly together. One more aspect is I want to highlight here is the UI5 web components. I mentioned we want to bring a consistent user experience also on other technology stack, let's say Angular or React. And how can we do this? We want to keep the UI implementation with, let's say, Angular or React, but on top put Fiori elements, on top put UI5 elements, UI5 qualities. As you can see, there's a list here, a couple of UI elements, a date picker here if you enter a date, and there's a button and there's a table and all these UI5 elements. But this is not the full SAP UI5 framework, but it's single UI elements which can be used on top of those other UI technologies. And that's a way we can provide consistency even on top of different technologies. And to compare this and link this also to what Stefanie will explain later is, if we're looking at the UI5 web components, they are individual UI elements, a button, a table, a list, and so on, with the respective Fiori design and behavior. If as an application developer, you're looking for a full framework with data binding, with navigation and all the features you typically want to have in an application framework, then SAP UI5 is the option. And we have Fiori elements, as Stefanie will explain, for an efficient development of UI5 applications. Just to mention, you've seen it on the previous slide, we also have Open UI5. It's an open source version of SAP UI5, so to be used with an Apache open source license, and it contains almost all features and capabilities of SAP UI5, in case that is a scenario you're interested in. Community SAP UI5 is working a lot with open source, is working a lot with the community. We have a community conference. You can see here information on the last conference, more deep dive information. So this is an important aspect to connect, to work with, to collaborate with the developer community. And a couple of links in case you want to learn about UI5. There's the UI5 demo kit, Open UI5. community topic page, the roadmap, have we planned for UI5, blog posts for understanding what is UI5, learning UI5, and open SAP courses, free online courses to learn about UI5 and also Fiori elements. Great. So thank you very much. I would like to hand it over to Raj to explain how to develop with, for example, UI5.
Thank you very much, Oliver. It was great introduction. Raj, maybe you could introduce yourself to people who just joined and just recap the intro.
Yes, just a second. I'm going to share my screen first. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Raj Korn, and I'm product manager for SAP Business Application Studio, SAP Web IDE. SAP Business Application Studio is a recommended development environment for SAP UI5 and SAP Fiori application development. You just heard Oliver with this great presentation on SAP UI5, and later on you'll hear Stefanie presenting SAP Fiori elements, which complements UI5 freestyle application development. And I'm going to talk a bit about and some basic presentation on SAP Business Application Studio, the highlights of the recent years. I've been in this forum last year. I think it was October 2020, when I presented basically the Business Application Studio. So what I'd like to do now is the agenda for this session. So I have about 20 minutes. So I'm going to give a very brief introduction to this application, so that just to make sure that we're on the same page. Then I'm going to talk about 3 major enhancements that we made in the last year. The first and foremost, the very most important one is the release of SAP Business Application Studio for low-code development, as well as SAP Business Application support for the free-tier plan. Both of these were on the recent SAP Tech keynote. So this is like really big news from 2021. And then another capability that I'd like you to be aware of is the service center that is available as part of Business Application Studio. Other than that, of course, we made a lot of additional enhancements, but these are really the 3 major ones that I want to discuss today. So let's start. So SAP Business Application Studio is pretty much the next generation of SAP Web IDE. Business Application Studio was made generally available in early 2020, actually in January 2020. Available on Azure, AWS, and AliCloud in China. Now it is also available in the trial environment, as well as it has a free-tier plan, and we'll discuss it later on in the presentation. So it's a modern development environment, allowed for efficient development of business applications for the intelligent enterprise. The main use cases that Business Application Studio is used for is to build web applications using a UI5 technology, basically UI5 freestyle applications or SAP Fiori elements applications. Another key use case is to extend SAP solutions, like extending the solutions database and exposing it as a meshed up service. workflow are created and maintained as well as deployed using the Business Application Studio, as well as mobile applications using mobile cards and mobile development kit. SAP HANA native applications are also developed for SAP HANA Cloud and SAP HANA Service on SAP BTP, are also created, developed and maintained using SAP Business Application Studio. So why are we going to talk about low-code application development? What's behind it? So with most companies accelerating their digital transformation, the importance of the application development to business performance has grown significantly. And what we learned from a report or research by McKinsey that studied more than 400 companies found a clear link between accelerating software innovation and business success. For example, companies that innovated faster had 60% higher total shareholder return and 20% higher operations margins. Basically, it means that today companies must not only master the nuance of their own industries, but they need to excel first and foremost in developing software. What is holding companies back from increasing their development velocity? So we all know that business demand for new applications is skyrocketing, and during the COVID pandemic, we learned that it's much more so, and it also sharpened the understanding that business requirements are constantly changing and evolving. And at the same time, there are limited resources. So professional developers are expensive, they're in short supply, but they have the skill set to deliver software in enterprise grade software. So how is SAP as a vendor for enterprise software can remove these kind of delaying factors and provide ways to increase developer productivity? Eventually, everything that we talk about is all about how can businesses boost their development in order to meet business needs. So SAP is looking at the low-code, no-code market in a more holistic view. It's not only the application composition or application development that is being addressed. We also address in SAP's view, we also address how the business user has his experience with SAP systems, as well as how other personas like a citizen developer or an automator can automate business processes. So it's a much broader view of the low-code, no-code capabilities. And I think also what Oliver just explained about UI5 flexibility really also falls into these low-code, no-code capabilities. And you'll also see in Stefanie's presentation on Fiori Elements, how Fiori Elements adds and provides additional capabilities for low-code and no-code. And for low-code, the no-code application, drilling down on the specific low-code and no-code application composition. So in SAP, we decided to offer a suite of tools where we can create unified development experience to enable the entire developer continuum. So this is like a term that we usually like to use, that we support with this suite of tools different types or different developer personas, from the citizen developer using no-code tools all the way to the professional developer that can use either the Business Application Studio or other standard IDEs such as VS Code. So for the citizen developers, a no-code development environment, SAP provides the SAP AppGyver to develop application, and with SAP Business Application Studio, we deliver a simplified application development journey also to the professional developers. So they have both the low-code view of the Business Application Studio as well as they can switch to the professional view. So basically our vision, SAP's vision, is a unified developer experience that supports low-code and no-code application development and process automation, increasing productivity of professional developers and enabling them to participate and contribute as needed within the continuum of developer persona. So they can support the citizen developer as well as the automators. And now taking a closer look at the Business Application Studio for low-code development. So you might know the Business Application Studio features a lot of SAP specific technologies such as UI5, Cloud Application Programming Model, and commonly used technologies such as Java, Node, and OData. And when we first introduced Business Application Studio to the market, we first and foremost addressed the professional developer. So we actually built the Business Application Studio with 3 layers of experience. Like the basic layer was to provide the command line interface. So everything that you wanted to do, you could have done through command line interface, text editors, really the basic stuff that many professional developers like to use. On top of it, we provided the command palette, which is a mini wizard, text-based wizard that guides the user through the steps to complete a command or to open a tool. And on top of it, we added a 3rd layer, which provides even higher productivity with forms, with graphical editors, with one-click button for various operations. So, for example, we have the layout editor of the Business Application Studio, which is basically what you see is what you get editor for UI development. And with the low-code capabilities that were recently introduced to the Business Application Studio, we provide an additional 4th layer that abstracts many of the development tasks. So although under the hood, the app developed uses the same tested and proven SAP technologies that we mentioned, the UI5, the cloud application, programming model, Fiori elements, as well as mobile development kit and workflow, the experience is completely different and suited to the skill set of citizen developers as well as professional developers who are familiar with the underlying technologies. The idea here is that we take the existing technologies of the cloud application programming model, the workflow mobile, and so on, and we turn it into a guided developer experience, which glues everything together and provides and helps you with various editor capabilities, makes sure that the developer does not get lost or loses time, which basically means that the developer loses productivity with the project structure, the syntax, the annotations, boilerplate code, making it enterprise grade, and so on. So the Business Application Studio, as developers are familiar with, is still there, but there's a low-code approach which helps to tie these technologies together and make sure that, for instance, one-click deployments enables you to quickly build applications which are based on these technologies. Okay, so basically I see that from time perspective. So with low code and no code solutions, the developer can confidently deliver high quality enterprise ready application using best practice from SAP. And what I'd like to do now is just to show you a bit how it looks like. So let's see. Okay.
Please don't worry about the time. We have a few questions that audience ask, or we'll keep it to the question time.
Okay, so as part of the low-code, no-code solution from SAP, we provide an entry point for developing this type of applications. This is the lobby, so let me just refresh it because it has a timeout, which I think expired. And from here you manage the full lifecycle of the low-code, no-code application, either an SAP AppGyver application, an SAP Business Application Studio application, or in the future also process automation. So you can quick start the application from the top, from various starting points, as well as use the create button and choose which tool you want to use, whether you want to use a no-code application with AppGyver or a low-code application with the Business Application Studio. And as I mentioned, in the future, we'll have here another capability, another option for process automation. And you see here all the various applications that you already created, and you can directly access them from here or perform operations on these applications. Currently, you can delete the application directly from here, and we expect to have additional capabilities to be available from the lobby. And how does a low-code application looks like? So I created in advance, of course, the application. So you can see the Business Application Studio loads, sees that the application is available, and launches the application within a new experience, a new low-code experience that is part of the Business Application Studio. So we need to give it just a few more seconds to load. And we can see here, this is how it looks like. So there is a guided development page that provides you all the details of what you need to do, the different steps and how you do them. There is the home screen where I can see my my application, and I can see the data models that are part of the application. So this is basically the database, the services that expose data from the data models, sample data that helps me to test the application if it is not connected to a remote to a backend, or if the database is empty. And I can develop the user interfaces that consume data using the exposed services. And of course, we can also add workflows to the project. I can see it through different views. This is like the homepage view. There is the Project Explorer view. I can see a different view of the project from the storyboard. So we can see here the data model services and UIs, and we can see directly additional details that are available. And let's go back to the home. So I can add data models, I can modify data models, and just so we have a quick view of how it looks like. You can see that basically everything is graphical. So it's low code environment. We can see here how the database tables look like, so how the models look like. I can connect the models. You can see here that the model of the CAPEX is connected to the contractors. You can see here the different properties, key properties, and so on. Same is true for the services, so I'll skip it. We have just released a couple of weeks ago a sample data editor. So we can see here the sample data that is currently available, and you can see that I can add additional rows to my sample data. And what's nice about it, since the IDE understands the link between the different entities, you can see here that the contractor is actually taken from a different table, so I can actually pick it up from here in the sample data editor. And of course, eventually, I can create user interfaces either based on Fiori Elements technology or using the mobile development kit for mobile applications. And here I have a Fiori Elements based application. And once I click to edit it, I get a form with the page map, and I can edit my application. And this is something that Stefanie is going to cover in her part of the session. So returning to the presentation, I'm providing here, and this will probably be shared after the meeting, various entry points to learn more about the low-code, no-code solutions from SAP. So there is like the homepage of the generic low-code, no-code capabilities, Business Application Studio homepage. Let's see where we publish news at the top and additional content for experts and so on. You can see here that we introduced a new section for low-code application development, also for upgrade and for process automation. Two brief updates on the additional items I wanted to discuss. Well, SAP BTP Free-Tier service, it's very much like the trial, and actually it will eventually replace the trial environment. It allows customers and partners to explore and try SAP BTP services, to start their development on the basics, and everything is very similar to the trial environment. You require to have a pay-as-you-go, pay-G, or a CPA. It's a consumption-based enterprise agreement to get access to the free-tier plans. The services, what's very nice about it is that the services run on the same platform as the paid services, so it's not on the trial environment, and we'll talk about it in a moment. The services are limited by capacity, which is not something new. It's exactly the same as the trial environment. It allows customers to upgrade immediately within the same global account. This is one key benefit. And it's important to mention that it's not meant for productive use. So very much like a trial, there's only community support, and the application developed with in the free-tier environment are for test and evaluation, not for productive use. What was announced in the recent decade, just a couple of weeks ago, is that free-tier is now available for individual global accounts. It means that just like in trial, you were able to create your own account in the trial environment. So now it's not only available for enterprise customers or partners, but also individuals can create BTP global accounts and use the free-tier services that are available there. So you need to have as I mentioned, you need to have CPA or pay-as-you-go agreement in place. And BIS Application Studio is one of the services that is available with a free tier plan. And here I wanted to highlight or repeat the advantages of the free tier compared to trial. So there's no time restriction as long as the contract is in place. And is good standing with SAP. You can use the free tier plan. It's on the productive environment, so it's not on the trial environment. So you enjoy exactly the same experience as productive accounts. And it allows for smooth and easy transition from test and evaluation to productive use. Last but not least, the service center. So within the BIS Application Studio, the professional view of the BIS Application Studio, we introduced a new pane, which is the service center. Acts as a central entry point to explore services from various service providers. You can hide or display the different service providers that are available there. Currently, we support a SAP system. It's also third-party systems are available through the SAP system provider, as well as SAP API Business Hub. You can explore the various services that are available there and create a project directly from the service center or add the services as an external data model to a CAP Node.js project. Another very important capability of the service center is the ability to create a destination directly from the BIS Application Studio instead of switching to the cockpit and navigating there and finding all the place exactly where to define the additional destination. You can create directly from the BIS Application Studio. And let me try and here it is. So this is basically how it looks like. You can see here this is the service center pane. You can see here that these are the SAP systems, and below it I have here the SAP API Business Hub as well, and I can look in, for example, in ES5 and see its status, see the different services that are available from here, all the basic stuff or the basic information for ES5. And I can drill down to a specific service and see all the information that is available for the specific service, all the different entities, how the entities are built, and so on. And I can create a project directly from this service. Okay, and so this is the service center and everything I mentioned. So I have here DS5s with the basic information and the different services and everything else, and one-click project creation from the service definition. And with that, I'd like to hand it back to you, Adi, I think.
So could everyone see the demo or just the presentation? I think Russ finished to make the presentation. Have you? So
it was possible to,
we saw the demo.
Is anyone from the students would like to share their demo? If yes, you could just present. Right now, we had a few questions also that Oliver nicely answered. We have one question with regards to the SAP Work Zone and SAP Fiori Launchpad service, which probably, I'm not sure who is the best person to answer. I also plan a separate session for SAP portals and SAP Work Zone in February 2022. Are you going to say anything with regard to those services, Oliver, Raz, or Stefanie? Or we could keep it for our next event.
No, I think it should be.
Go ahead, Raz.
I think it should be handled by in a separate event dedicated to the end user experience.
Okay. Yeah, I also just Suresh, to answer your question, we're not leaving this question. We'll just probably answer it in different session. Thanks very much, Oliver and Russ, for your presentation. So this is the time when we usually either take a break, or during the break we could have some of the roundtable. So I've seen Dr. Teklama from Victoria University join the session, and I asked him if he would like to say any words with regards to Raj Natarajan, who passed away in October, unfortunately, and we dedicated the session to him. Is it Tech, would you like to say a few words, or we'll let to students to ask questions?
Thank you. Can you hear, Adi?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, Raja has been teaching SAP, especially the computerized accounting, for quite some time now. In fact, since 2015, he has been our core teaching staff, although in casual capacity. For a long time, and it was quite unfortunate and quite sad that he succumbed to the COVID, I believe, and on 23rd of October, and it was a shock to everyone, including me, and we knew that he was sick, but we never knew that he was that sick to leave the world, leave us and the world altogether. Thank you so much Adi, for dedicating this session to him. It was very good honor for him and for us at the university. I believe you all, we also had a memorial service a few days ago at BU Sydney, and there was this was another memorable things that we can give him for his long contribution to our university, and so many students that has been graduated in the past and probably currently working in the industry. And I really appreciate Adi and all the teams that organized this one, and also dedicating to this session to Raja. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jack. So I mentioned in my intro that once we had an event face-to-face in Victoria University before COVID, Raj actually helped me a lot to organize the session with students. So for me, it was very personal touch what happened. But thanks, everyone. Let's come to our students, because I requested from students that learned how to use Business Application Studio for the last 7 weeks to present their works. They became a little bit shiny once I explained who is Oliver, Raz, and Stefanie. Oliver, Raz, and Stefanie, they are the top of the top in SAP. Raz is running Business Application Studio development in SAP Labs, and Oliver is the director level. And Stefanie is also chief product expert. So, but I encourage students to ask questions and show their work. This is the way how you could promote yourself and join the industry. That's not every time possible that you could speak to our great speakers in person and ask questions directly. Usually we have them in events like SAP Tech Night and so, but not in such community event. But if no one would like to share their experience or provide some additional question, probably we'll move on to our next speaker, to Stefanie, and keep some time for the Q&A at the end. Stefanie, would you like to introduce yourself, take the screen sharing, and provide your presentation?
Sure, I'm happy to. So let me take the screen sharing. And while I'm doing that, briefly introduce myself. So my name is Stefanie Hager, and I'm product manager responsible for SAP Fiori Elements, which is the metadata and template-driven framework that sits on SAP UI5 and is actually part of SAP UI5 and leverages a lot of the great capabilities that SAP UI5 already provides. And I'm also responsible for SAP Fiori Tools, which is a tooling set that we deliver as part of SAP Business Application Studio, and maybe some of you have already tried it out in the past few months. And I will give you a short demo of that, and will show you how to build a small SAP Fiori Elements application in using SAP Fiori Tools towards the end of these 25 minutes. So my intention is to keep the amount of slides a bit low and really try and do some things in the system. But before I get started, I actually want to put myself in an SAP's customer's shoes. And for an SAP customer, it always starts with a business scenario, right? So I'm an SAP customer. I'm looking for a solution for a business scenario. Now I want to find out, okay, what's the right technology to use? Now, first thing every SAP customer should do is check, okay, is there already a Fiori app that I can use to fulfill my business case? And if there is, okay, I'm more or less done. I just need to implement it. If that app is a pretty good fit, but it still needs some smaller changes, then the customer should really go for SAP UI5 flexibility, which is what Oliver talked about earlier, right? It's taking the standard app and extending it modification-free so that it remains update stable, upgrade safe, and whatever SAP delivers, it will still continue to run. Now, of course, we often also have the case that there's a scenario which SAP does not deliver out of the box, and that's now where we are building the new app and where really Business Application Studio can unleash its full potential. And that's also where SAP Fiori Elements and SAP UI5 come into the game. So the question is often, when should I use SAP Fiori Elements? When should I use SAP UI5 Freestyle, as I will continue to call it? And that is really you need to look at your scenario. You need to see, okay, can my app follow a standard floor plan? And we deliver a set of standard floor plans. I will show you these floor plans live in an S4 system in a few minutes. And if the app does follow, this is a good fitment to such a floor plan, then the strong recommendation is use SAP Fiori Elements. If, however, you need more flexibility, and you really need to, design the app in a very specific way, then you can still build on the great capabilities that SAP UI5 delivers. And both Fiori Elements and SAP UI5 Freestyle apps are supported through SAP Fiori Tools in SAP Business Application Studio. Before I jump into the system, very briefly, what are the three key pillars, the key value proposition that SAP Fiori Elements delivers? The first one is that we really want to boost developer productivity. SAP Fiori Elements is the framework that SAP uses to build about 80% of the Fiori apps that we deliver with S/4HANA. So we really need a way to scale this development. That's thousands of apps that we're delivering. So that there needs to be scaling in here. And that's why we're using SAP Fiori Elements for that. So with Fiori Elements, you really can focus on the business logic and you don't have to write so much UI code. And that ultimately also reduces the development costs, but at the same time, and I think actually even more important, the maintenance costs, right? Because a lot less code means a lot less maintenance. So in the long run, it really pays off. Second one is user experience consistency. Oliver already talked quite a bit about this. SAP Fiori Elements takes user experience consistency to the next level. SAP UI5 delivers all the uniform controls and fonts and colors. And as you could see, if a new theme is introduced, like the Horizon theme, that is taken care of by SAP UI5. And SAP Fiori Elements really ensures also a consistent layout and a consistent look and feel across the apps that we deliver. So whatever you are building with SAP Fiori Elements will look very much the same as what we're delivering out of the box with S/4HANA. Next and last pillar is, of course, a combined quality from SAP UI5 and Fiori Elements, and that is the enterprise readiness, so compliance to the product standards. A lot of that already comes out of SAP UI5. On top, of course, the SAP Fiori Elements really gives you stable and optimized UI code. But enough slides. As promised, I will do as much as possible in the system. And for this, I'm now in an S/4HANA demo system. And I'm showing you the first and probably most used, actually the most used floor plan that we have in S/4HANA, and that's a list report. And a list report obviously is a list for managing business objects. It's pretty plain example here with with not too much color. Could of course also include pictures, etc. And a list report will always consist of a search and filter area that pretty much comes out of the box. All you as an app developer need to do is specify what kind of filter fields you want to see. You get variant management out of the box. You get personalization capabilities. The second part is, of course, this content area where you have a table with the business objects, including CRUD actions, personalization, export capabilities, and of course, navigation to a single object instance, which is displayed on an, this was a bad example. Let me take a different one. Let me quickly jump. This one is in preparation. Okay. So this is an object page, and an object page will have the most important information to identify that object in the header area, and then you have the content structured into multiple sections. Sections can be pretty much anything, forms, tables, could also be graphical elements like this process flow here. Very important, it comes with edit capabilities out of the box, and edit capabilities also include draft management. Third floor plan that we offer is an overview page, obviously intended to provide a role-specific overview. It features these cards like analytics cards, table cards, etc., and also jumping off point into a business process by clicking here on the header of one of these. So for example, if I click here on monitor purchase order items, I open the fourth floor plan that I want to show you, which is an analytical list page. And the analytical list page is a variation of the list report with added analytics capabilities like this chart, which is interactive with the table, and also very nice, these visual filters, which are intended to make it easy for the user to decide what filter criteria to apply. So for instance, I can now check here, okay, see there's 12 deliveries coming up, filter, and the chart and the table are adapted accordingly. Okay, I need to watch the time a little bit. So I'm going back to the slides very quickly. Before I do that, just want to emphasize again, SAP Fiori apps for S/4HANA, 80% we are actually covering with the floor plans that you just saw. All right, what do we need to build an SAP Fiori Elements? We need an OData service. And I think you probably all know what OData is. OData is a protocol that sits on top of HTTP, and with version 4, it's actually ISO-approved OASIS standard. And it's a standardized way of accessing data from pretty much any backend that supports OData. And SAP Fiori Elements doesn't care where your OData service comes from. It just needs to comply to few standards, like it needs to be V4 or V2, and then it can be pretty much any backend system. It doesn't even have to be SAP. So we also have a customer who's built a Fiori Elements app on top of a Microsoft SharePoint. Now, Having said that, of course, it can be more or less difficult to get to such an OData service. So if you are using a classic ERP system, an ECC, then it takes a little bit of effort to expose your backend logic via OData. If, however, you can make use either of the ABAP RESTful application programming model that we refer to as RAP, or if you want to use Node.js or Java and use our cloud application programming model, then it's just generating, press on a button to generate the corresponding OData service. And my demo, by the way, will be using cloud application programming model in Node.js. Couple more words, how does it actually work? So you as an application developer need to provide the OData service to expose the data and the relations. And then you also need to add some annotations, and the annotations specify, what fields are to be shown in the table or in the filter, specify the characteristics and the dimensions for the chart, etc. They can also provide additional semantics and behavior. Talk a little bit more about this in a minute. And then the Fiori Elements framework takes that information and applies some generic controller logic and actually renders it into UI5 controls based on the standard floor plan. A few more words about annotations. Annotations, as said, can specify, which fields to show, so which columns to show, fields to show here in the columns. They can specify additional semantics, like, okay, this is not just, a string. This is actually an email address, so the UI knows how to render it accordingly. And with annotations, you can also specify behavior, like, okay, this entity can be edited. Quick recap, last slide before we go into the demo. Fiori Elements framework provides you the floor plans and the standard UI code and logic. Application developer provides an OData service and annotations, and with that you already have an enterprise-grade application. Now, obviously, not every use case will be possible to just exactly fit into one of our floor plans. So we provide a lot of flexibility already to adapt these standard floor plans to your specific needs. And some parts are really via pure configuration and low-code tools, and that you will see in the demo. But it's also possible to plug in custom code. And we are really investing a lot into this plugging in of custom code. It can be SAP UI5 freestyle code that you can plug in various places. But we are also investing into what we call building blocks, which are actually, parts of our Fiori Elements framework that you can then reuse in your custom code. And we have a great example, a hands-on exercise from TechEd, where you can really experiment with these building blocks and with freestyle code. I'll provide you that link. All right, but now really enough slides, and we are moving into the system. So I'm in SAP Business Application Studio, and what I have already done is I have cloned a cloud application programming model project into my workspace here. And maybe before I continue, Oliver, Russ, is it possible? Is this large enough, or do I need to zoom in a bit?
Zooming in a little bit would be good. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so if I open the app structure here, you can see that I already have these CDS files, I already have an OData service available. My scenario is about managing travels, and boy, do we all wish we could travel again. So this is really, an optimistic approach. We all want to travel, and I'm already building an app to manage these travels. Now, to get started, I can just start here on the welcome page from start from template, and what I want to do is I want to build a Fiori application. Now this is Fiori Tools, and as said, Fiori Tools supports both SAP Fiori Elements and also SAP UI5 Freestyle. In my case now, I'm going to generate an SAP Fiori Elements application, and I want to choose a list report object page. Now in the next step, I need to select the data source, and I could, there's various options, like I could connect to an SAP system or just to ONO data endpoint. But in my case, I'm using a local cloud application programming project. And I've already opened the corresponding folder here, and that project now contains only one OData service, so it's easy to pick. I need to specify what's the main entity that I'm going to show in my table, and that's a travel entity. And in addition to being able to navigate to an individual travel, I also want to be able to do one level more to the bookings. Obviously, I need to provide a module name and an application title, and it's always good practice to work with namespaces. I could add Fiori Launchpad configuration. I'm not doing this here, but I do want to show you a few things in the advanced options, like I could specify what UI5 version I want to use for my development and for my testing. I could specify the theme, so if I wanted to use the New Horizon theme, very soon you'll be able to select that here. Oh, and by the way, let's pick a specific UI5 version, 1996, which is the one that would already include the Horizon theme. And in my case, I just want to skip the annotations file because I already have some in my CAP project. Thing is, if you work with CAP projects, you can use different types of annotations. And with a CAP project, it's very much recommended to use CAP CDS annotations. So you can see now it's installing the dependencies. There's already a new folder that's appeared here that's called Manage Travels. My web app is here. And now that the generation has finished, I get this application info page, which gives me some essential information about my app and also gives me quick links to what I can do next. So first thing I want to do is I want to preview my application. And if I choose this watch script here, I will get an auto refresh mechanism. Let me move this to another window for easier viewing. Okay, so as I mentioned, my CAP project already includes some CDS annotations. So, and these annotations, just specify what are the filters, what are the columns. They also already specify what information should be included on the object page. So I already have a fully functioning app with, actually it's a fairly short amount of coding already with edit capabilities. But now I'm not quite happy with that app. I want that status to be closer to the top, and I want it colored. And I also want to see the list and the object in one browser window and not, split into two. So in order to do that, I'm going back to my Business Application Studio. And in my Business Application Studio, I'm now opening the page map. And that's what you already saw earlier briefly when Raj did his demo. Let me zoom in here a bit as well. And the first thing that I'm going to do, basically because it's here in the first page, is I'm switching on this flexible column layout. And this will now actually split my window into two. At the same time, just to save some time, I'm going here into the page editor of the list report. And I want to make sure that the loading happens immediately and I don't explicitly have to press on the go button. That's just for demo purposes a lot nicer. As you could see, I could search for a parameter that I can set for a property here. And you can also see something happening in the background. Auto refresh is not working. As always, this is a live. Now you can tell it's a live demo because it did work when I tested it right before this session.
Let's cheers to Stefanie. Thank you very much for the live. We trust this is not recording.
This is bound to happen, but let me just stop the watch and start it again, and you will see the update.
What we found with multiple students, there is the lock on the browser itself, and sometimes after the refresh, the browser itself blocking.
Yeah. We have been having a little bit of trouble here with the preview functionality. Okay, but as you could see, it was only preview. So now you do have the split screen. Let me move this window over into my other browser. So now you have that split screen view where you have the list on the left and the details on the right. Now let's hope that the preview is a bit more stable now. And because I do want to show you just a little bit of the low-code capabilities that Russ talked about. So I'm now here in the page editor and in the table, and I can see all the columns that I have in my table. And what I want to do now, for example, is I want to I want to move the travel status right to the top. And not only do I want to move the travel status, you can see update happening. Okay, and now auto refresh is also working. Because now here you have the travel status. Let me move this window a little bit. Now you have the travel status to the very left. But what is also very nice is I want to bring in some color. And I want to have a color coding. I want to be able to easily identify what are the critical entities. And so now I'm going, I'm clicking here on the travel status field, and I'm looking at the properties at the criticality. And here I already have a property for travel status criticality. I turn it on. And in a minute, you will see that the status now gets a color coding here. There's a lot more that you can do here. For example, you could, you can move multiple fields if you wanted to. There is a lot more configuration that's possible. One last thing that I want to show you, because I think we're running out of time, is that this is now a place where you could also add in custom functionality. So you could add in a custom column. You could for sure add in on the object page a custom section. So if you want to have your own dedicated tab, you can add your custom section here. Will give you a pop-up where you need to populate, and then it auto-generates a custom section where you can plug in your own coding. And that's one very last thing. I have to make sure I don't get carried away. So you can jump into the corresponding UI code at any time, because next to every property you have this icon here where you can jump back in the code. So if you prefer to use our annotation LSP, do the coding by hand, you can easily jump back and forth between low code and pro code capabilities. Right, so much for demo. And Adi, I think I need to stop, right? Which is a good match. I just have compiled a few links for you if you want to learn more about this. We really have some great tutorials. So for some snack bites, we also have a comprehensive open SAP course on building SAP Fiori elements. It was just recently released in June, so it's very current. And if you want to learn more about extending SAP Fiori Elements apps, take a look at the hands-on session from TechEd. It's a comprehensive example hands-on session that we have available in GitHub for you to use at any time. And with that, I think it's really high time we open for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, you, Stefanie, and everyone else for presenting and making this live demo. I think this is just outstanding, and everyone's seen that this is possible. Of course, I will share all the links. But now the stage is open, maybe for everyone who waited for this moment to ask question. If it's okay with everyone, I will ask my first question. What we see in our environments, multiple organizations not yet moving with their backends towards new modern technologies. You mentioned that somebody created Fiori apps with the SharePoint as the backend, but SharePoint is all data created by Microsoft type of tool. It's modern. Multiple customers still run technology that maybe could not generate all data services yet. And I think this is the roadblock. We could create beautiful front end. We could even deploy some of the apps, but the backend become really, really the barrier for us. So what is SAP opinion? How could we improve customer adoption to modern backends? Is it any tip that you could provide from experience from around the globe? Or we need to, first of all, go and change the backend and then extend the front ends?
Well, maybe I can share one experience that I have from a customer workshop that I did a few weeks ago, and that customer was running on ECC. And yes, it is possible to create OData services on ECC, but it's a lot more work, and you can't leverage the full power of SAP UI5 Fiori Element, especially Fiori Elements, if you have an older version of ECC and corresponding NetWeaver, of course. So what that customer did is they say, okay, all the new applications that we're going to create, we will really build them on SAP BTP, and we will replicate data from my ECC system for those custom apps. I mean, this is true for custom apps now, of course, right? And they haven't really fully decided yet, are they going to build all their new apps using CUP? So they're trying a little bit with CUP and Node.js now. They're building the first app with that. But they're also looking into the ability to use RAP, so ABAP RESTful Application Programming Model, which it's often referred to as the steampunk environment, which is also available on BTP, and thereby kind of trying to bridge the time when they're still on an older backend, but still at least, for custom apps, they can already leverage the latest technologies. I mean, that is one thing that customers can do, but in the end, of course, it needs to be the goal to upgrade the backend technologies to move to S/4HANA in the end.
Thank you.
And maybe I can just add on a very technical level, on top of what Stefanie said. Looking at the UI5 technology, we are also working on, let's say, breaking it up into different modules or making it more flexible. In that sense, for example, not only being able to consume OData services, but also making the UI elements, the individual controls, into breaking them up into different parts. One is the UI rendering, the visual part, and one is the REST, for example, binding to an OData service. And with that, we're making it more flexible to also consume other protocols on UI5 level. For example, the health industry is using a FHIR protocol, for example, to exchange health records. So it's a requirement we have also in SAP to use that protocol instead of OData. So at least on the technical OData level, we're working towards more flexibility. But on the big level, of course, I can support what Stefanie explained.
Thank you, Hager. Anyone else?
Adi, I've got a question out there. I'll put in the chat, Adi. Okay.
Would you like to say, because
yeah, sure. Is that, Stefanie, thanks for your demo. It was really awesome. It looks like the Business Application Studio is offering a lot to the developers. It's like a very low code. Traditionally, we need to do a lot of coding to do that, but this particular Business Application Studio is offering a lot. Is that something the Web IDE will not be preferred going forward? People will start using Business Application Studio, or is it something, because in your presentation you showed that SAP Web IDE will be for very minimum kind of development, but majority of those will be done in Business Application Studio. How do we take on that? What is the difference between Web IDE and Business Application Studio?
So SAP Business Application Studio is actually the evolution of SAP Web IDE. It's the product replacing SAP Web IDE. We are putting all of our development resources into developing capabilities in the SAP Business Application Studio. We still support SAP Web IDE for all our customers. We do not have yet any date for sunsetting SAP Web IDE, but you should not expect to have new capabilities and new features on SAP Web IDE. All the new stuff will be available only on SAP Business Application Studio.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
So maybe I can build a little bit on that. So for example, the SAP Fiori tools that you saw, that's only available in Business Application Studio, actually also in Visual Studio Code for offline development, but primarily, of course, in Business Application Studio. And because you had asked a question about migration earlier, so I forgot to mention that during my demo. So when you import a project into Business Application Studio and you open, you will immediately be asked if you want to do a migration. So at least for SAP Fiori Elements apps, you can easily, actually it's all fully automated, migrate Web IDE projects into SAP Fiori tools, into Business Application Studio. And Oliver, I think also for UI5 Freestyle apps, that migration mechanism works to a good extent. And what that migration mechanism does is it basically adapts and adds additional files that Fiori tools need to be able to handle imported apps, to be able to build on all the functionalities. And what I also hadn't mentioned is the capabilities for UI5 don't stop just with the generator. We also offer the migration and the deployment capabilities both for UI5 Freestyle and for Fiori Elements-based apps.
Good. Thank you. Thanks.
From my own experience, Raz, you asked a question why we decided to move from Web IDE to Business Application Studio. The real reason is it's transition from Neo to Cloud Foundry, and all the capabilities that we could use in Business Application Studio that we couldn't use in Web IDE. What is missing from our perspective is the use of the build still alive. And some of the clients like to create some of the prototypes using build. So we used Web IDE just to import the build project and show the app very quickly. And now we don't know what are we going to do. But yeah, maybe it will still make it possible to upload this to Business Application Studio. The reason is the end users, they're not professional developers. And the build provided them some opportunity to quickly express what are they trying to see in the end product. We try to show other tools. The feedback was that it's too technical and they need to have a technical resource on their side. And they moved to PowerPoint, more or less. So I think PowerPoint, they're going backwards from the build. It's great for some of the issues. Yeah, that's just the source from our side.
And Russ, maybe if I can comment on that, because we get that question a lot. And I'm hearing from a lot of customers, hey, why are you, discontinuing Build? We really liked it. Now, the thing that customers typically liked about Build, at least from what I've been hearing, and maybe you've been hearing something different, is exactly that ability to, draw up their mock-ups very quickly. The code that it actually generated wasn't something that was of much use. So the code that's automatically generated through Build, typically we got the feedback it's not very good, useful code. So it was mostly for creating mockups. And Build will be discontinued. There's several blogs out there. I can post you the links that explain, how Build is going to be discontinued. And there's basically two things that you can do instead. One thing is really go for a proper design mockup tool like Figma or maybe Hager, which is pretty easy to learn and pretty simple to create the mockups. And you have all the Fiori stencils available there. So it does take a little bit of ramp up, of course, to get used to these tools. But then it's really not that difficult. And the other option that you have is you can go and really get more familiar with SAP Fiori tools. So if it's a Fiori Elements app that you're intending to build, it's actually almost as quick to just use our data editor. So there's a data editor module in there, and you can mock your data very easily, and then have an initial POC rather than just a mock-up to use and discuss with your clients. This, of course, only works for Fiori Elements apps. That's the two paths that we are promoting here.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, we're trying to close this gap between the very technological type of people and very business-oriented people. We assume it's some kind of the Australian flavor. And everywhere in the world is different, that people more technical, but we have a layer of the business analysts that are really struggling to work with technical tools, and they like it to build. Yes, the code is not as great, but to understand what the customer really wants was great to use the build, and then we could rebuild the code using something else. But if you're rebuilding the code using something else, that's too much effort on our side. That was the main reason.
Yeah, and I understand. And as I said, we do hear this, but I think there's various reasons why Build will just not be continued. And rather than raising false hopes, I would just rather tell it as it is. That Build is going to be discontinued, and it's not in our hands. So the second best thing, I think, is really so for people really not technically oriented, do take a look at Figma, do take a look at Hager. We do have all these stencils, and there it's, not quite as easy as in Build maybe, but it's also pretty easy to pretty much get these clickable mockups very quickly. That customer workshop that I related to, there we used that, for example. In this case, we used Hager, but I think Figma is the tool that's more on the rise. Also internally in SAP, we're more betting on Figma. And it's very quick to put these mockups together. It takes half an hour or so to have a first list report object page clicked together.
That's awesome. So we will also introduce this tool to the uni, because they still use the build as well. So maybe let's not provide some tools that will be in the sunset. Let's introduce some tools that will be in sunrise. Yeah. And with that, probably, if there are no more questions, we just few minutes past the time that we allocated to this event. So thanks everyone for keeping till this moment. I will make the last round of, if there is any question from anyone, you either could post it here, ask question on, maybe we will ask question offline. And with that, probably we'll need to close our event, and really appreciate our great speakers that you made it. And look, it's just amazing. We really appreciate what you shared with us with
such a short notice.
So with that,
thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
I would like to wish to everyone happy festival season, and let's stay safe the situation with the COVID still not under control. And yes, your application about the travel is very relevant, but we don't know how relevant it is. We put some hopes that we are opening our borders and suddenly it's shut again. Yeah, that's probably.
Adi, did I hear an invitation to Sydney? Did I hear that between the lines?
Oliver, it's not just the invitation. I got also financing from Jürgen Müller for this. I got also the money for this. It's not just invitation. It's invitation with the ticket.
Oh,
Okay.
that sounds great.
Count me in.
Yes, that's definitely the problem is that Australia promised to open the border from December 1st. Then we delayed this to December 15th. And today we're not sure if it will be open even before Christmas. But definitely we had all of those events in person all the time. This is just because of the COVID for the last 2 years. We're running in this remote way. But let's see the half of the positive of it. We could have you presenting without me going to Jürgen and asking for budget to fly you in. He said I could not join the session, but next time in person, he will find some budget to bring you in.
Right.
That sounds
Great.
awesome.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, and thanks for our audience. And I would like to say to the students who've been in this session, don't be shy. Just try to show whenever you could. I think in this way, some of the companies sold their IP to SAP. They just try and try and try, and Raj probably could explore in some other sessions how it could be done. Thanks, everyone, and let me just close this call with real appreciation to every presenter. And please share with me the presentations that I could share with everyone who could or could not join this call, especially with the links. I will put also all the links from the chat with the questions in my PPT, and with your permission, I will distribute it. And if it will be okay to upload this presentation to the Uni, I will ask Tech to complete it. So everyone else from students will be able to see the presentation from the Uni page. And if it's okay, we will share this presentation to Raj family as well. Yeah, it was an unfortunate loss for every one of us, especially because face-to-face events been conducted in Uni once, and Raj helped us a lot to organize it. Yeah, so let's hope for the best in the next year. Yes, the invitation is on its way. I had this invitation already for more than 1 year, but unfortunately, that's the force majeure with the COVID. Let's make sure that this will not prevent from us to have meetings face-to-face next year. With that, thanks everyone, and see you face-to-face in the better
Thank
situation.
you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
See you. Stay safe.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Have a great rest of the evening, afternoon, or morning. Goodbye, everyone.